Tech press is over.
Wow.
There is no future for tech press. I have to be extremely clear about the message. And then I have to put it in its most shocking terms.
What are some of your coping mechanisms for dealing with negative discourse?
This is the Wimbart Way.
I don't think you need an introduction, but please introduce yourself.
I am a tech founder, tech investor, tech entrepreneur, tech enthusiast. I've been working in the ecosystem for the last 10 plus years. I sound old when I say that.
But you're young.
I'm not that old. Very passionate about African technology ecosystem and plotting how we can make it the best in the world.
So I first came across you, I read about you in the press, and you've always been a skilled media operator from day one.
Well, I used to be a journalist.
So you understood the power of... And funny enough, I've said that to people previously when they say, oh, Iyin is managed to do this. I'm like, he used to be a journalist. He knows how to construct a narrative and a story. And I think that what really catapulted you and Andela into the headlines is when you coined the term Andela is harder to get into than Harvard.
Yeah,
Where did that come from? When you developed that narrative, could you foresee how powerful that would be?
I think, to be honest, I have to give Jay, who's perhaps one of the greatest storytellers in the world, credit for that. And then there was a guy on our team who was an Obama speechwriter called Adam. He ended up writing speeches for India as well. So Andela had some very savvy storytelling people. And they coined that. And the big idea was, hey, how do we communicate to a global audience how excellent this talent is? And, the bar for excellence in America when it comes to talent is Harvard. Higher education participation in Africa is 12%, right? Which is roughly the number of American students that go to an Ivy League. So if you think about the reality, almost everybody who goes to university in these parts of the world is technically Ivy League level. So, it was a good narrative. It was a good twist. It was a way to relate with the audience that we wanted to get.
And the success was really in its simplicity, and it conveyed a lot in one succinct message. But with hindsight, do you think in some ways it was almost oversimplified and it didn't really talk about some of the challenges, or it didn't really explain the landscape as much as it needed to?
As you know very well with storytelling, the point is for it to be simple and oversimplified. Narrative doesn't have time for nuance, right? And of course, there were challenges. There continue to be challenges. There were subtleties, but I don't think that narrative necessarily harmed in any way. If anything, it just set the bar so high that it made it very difficult for our competitors to match.
I think that's true, because even now people still talk about
Andela is the category.
Benchmark, but it's really those heady years of like
2014, 2015. So.
And then I guess the next narrative shift has gone on to Andela Mafia as well.
Yes,
like you cannot move in the ecosystem without Andela Mafia being, creating, building, operating.
Yeah, I mean, that's the idea. You want to create a bar for excellence, and you want to set it up really, really high. And to be honest, the narrative, and this is one thing I would say I've learned in my own career, the narrative has to be true. So the reality is, like I said, these young people were just on the numbers, quite frankly, more talented than a lot of the people who get to go to Harvard. And they've proved that out. Yeah. So it was just, what is the one key insight that drives this entire narrative? And I think that's what Andela harped on. And it's what I tell founders till today. I tell them, storytelling is really about finding the screaming headline nobody else can print.
Love that point. And I think it was backed up, as you say, it was authentic, it was true. You could, when you met Andelans, you got it, you understood it, and they were proud to be part of Andela, and they were very much part of that storytelling.
Yeah.
So it was super authentic. It wasn't just, here's a corporate line.
Yeah. I'm wearing the first to do what we did, to be honest, right? But it was just hard for other people to follow that in terms of the way the narrative is. And it's the biggest lesson I keep telling them. And what you'll notice is with the companies I'm deeply involved with as it concerns storytelling, I always try to repeat that, which is Flutterwave, Africa is not a country, but we make you feel like one.
Yes. Okay. No.
And even with Moove, right? Telling the story about providing access to mobility across cultures and everything. So it just keeps going.
So when you leave Andela and then you start Flutterwave, and I guess even your work with Moove, do people have certain expectations of how you're going to help them shape that narrative? Are you that sort of chief storyteller, chief narrative
that's my
guy?
job, right? The biggest thing, and it's funny that storytelling is often underrated by founders, but the reality is it's what creates the most value, because when you're building a company is nothing really, right? It's just an idea. But depending on how powerfully you communicate that idea, you can align a lot of disparate stakeholders to come together and make something work. So government, other, even competitors, your customers who are often competitors, investors, employees, everybody has to come together behind a very clear narrative around what you're trying to do. Future Africa, for example, the fund for Africa's future. You got to keep it very simple and make it very clear what exactly it is that you're trying to do.
So when you then went on to Flutterwave, did you use exactly the same approach as you have done at Andela, or did you think did you modify it?
No. Quite literally, myself and Iyinoluwa, who was very critical to Andela's brand, sat down in a loft in San Francisco and spent half a day crafting Flutterwave's brand story. And honestly, most of the stuff, including this cock and bull story about how Flutterwave butterfly, and when we just created it.
Are you serious?
The butterfly effect. We created the story in one sitting.
Love that. And then so Moove then, how did that come about?
Yeah, same is basically, the story we were telling was one of the biggest challenges for people to be able to earn a living is being able to move from wherever they lived, which was typically going to be cheaper in the hinterland, to work in the morning, right? And so we're going to move them. Very simple. How do we make sure that we have the mobility, we increase mobility assets so it's cheap enough for us to get them from Ejigbo to Ikoyi every morning and take them back home at night, period.
So we've just casually name dropped 3 unicorns, Andela, Flutterwave, Moove. How many companies have you spent that time, that whole half a day each time, where it hasn't sort of scaled that far? Like, what does the storytelling graveyard look like?
There's many, because not every story you tell catches on. And sometimes, actually, you have to change it a few times. So I'm sure many people know about Town City, which isn't a graveyard company. It's just taking longer. And we had to change the name to Itono. Many people don't know about Street Capital. That was probably maybe one of our earliest storytelling graveyards. And we tried to tell a story about being the capital that's on the street. We still use the name, but we don't use it publicly. So it's just kind of somewhere in the graveyard charm.
And you're reflective of them. How do you kind of process that? Or you just move on and think, I've got another half day's worth of work and need to come up with a whole round of Flutterwave?
I think I pick up a bunch of heuristics from those lessons, right? The one thing is you have to be very unique.
Yeah.
And when I say very unique, like Talent City versus Itana, it's like in the name, you can use a phrase to describe an entire entity, but you have to be very particular about how you build a movement around the name. And that means that you have to give it identity. And it has to have some gravitas, and it has to be something nobody has heard before.
How intentional are you about having brand Andela, brand Flutterwave, brand Moove, brand Future Africa, and brand E? How can you or do you differentiate between all of them? Because even for a while, a few years back, you were operating in the political space.
Yeah.
Which doesn't always kind of sit that closely with like tech space, for example. Like, how do you navigate all these different personas, all these different brands?
I think the first thing is to recognize that most of the rules are not designed for you. You have to make your own rules when it comes to this stuff. And I think maybe one of the few areas where PR people don't really do their clients any service is like when it's like a template thing, right?
Yeah.
And you're not actually styling it. I think, yes, for most people, tech and politics don't mix, but for me, absolutely, right? Because like I play in the policy space, right? And so even when, you take very risque moves, ultimately you're looking at the upside in the end, and you're thinking much broader about influence and power, because that's really what media gives you. It gives you power and visibility. And you're thinking about, okay, I'm going to take a bet on this crazy bet, and could lose it all in this crazy bet, but there's also a chance that you could make it tops too. And I guess I've made it tops more times than I've not. So
You have. And so, like, walk us through your decision making in terms of how intentional you are about which media you speak to, how you engage with them, when you engage with them. Like, what are your thought process? What are your decision processes?
So, I mean, the first thing is I have to be extremely clear about the message, and then I have to put it in its most shocking terms. So that part is very intentional. Extremism.
And why is that?
Because
So
otherwise you don't get attention.
Okay, so you're thinking in headlines.
I always think in headlines. Yeah. It's headlines, bold, caps. Donald Trump, thank you for your attention, quite literally, to this. That's literally how media works. So you have a few seconds to say something profound. You can't get professorial. You have to deliver a big, bold message. And perhaps there is no nuance in that. But then you get to nuance when people are paying attention, for those who need it.
So you have to grab attention first, and then once you have that attention, then you can spend a little bit more time and energy on nuance and complexities.
Yeah. But if you don't have the attention, no one's listening.
So you speak to a lot of founders, just generally as a mentor, as an elder at your young age in the ecosystem as well. And then obviously through Future Africa, you're investing in a huge number of startups too. Yeah. What are the founders getting right? And what are the areas that you see broadly in terms of need for improvement when it comes to storytelling and engaging, not just media, but also investors?
I think they're hewing too closely to the templates.
Okay.
Like, I think they're listening too much to PR.
Oh, wow.
I think they're losing authenticity.
Okay.
Right? Many of them are just not themselves. And I think it's because they're optimizing for an audience that, quite frankly, no longer cares about them and what they have to say.
Who's the audience that doesn't care about them anymore?
US investors.
Yes, okay.
Like, I don't see any reason why you should be on TechCrunch as opposed to on your own blog now, or having your own Twitter.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, US investors don't care. They used to, now they don't.
It's always been a red flag for me when we have new business calls with people and they just start reeling off Economist, CNN, BBC, but they're almost adamant that they don't want to be in local tech press. And there's a sort of slight snobbishness around it, or, I don't know, mistrust. And for me, it's important to engage your local press and get that sort of local...
Well, I also think the local press haven't done themselves any favors too,
okay,
right?
In what ways?
They just aren't telling incredible stories. They're not getting the attention of the local crowd either. I mean, if you ask your local, not plugged in investor, where do you get your news from? It's not local press.
Where do they get their press from?
TikTok.
TikTok?
Yes, TikTok, Twitter, LinkedIn.
Okay.
Like, there has never been a better time for a founder to build a direct to consumer brand. And actually, if you notice, Future Africa has actually stayed off news since 2022. Mm-hmm. I don't want to be next, and I try to advise our companies to do the same. I don't want to be sharing a page with a company with a scandal, right? It's just not, it's not good PR for me. It's bad energy, you know?
Really? Why's that?
It's just bad energy. Even if I have something good to say, I just don't want it to be right after you've read a piece about some founder stealing money. It's just not what I'm trying to do.
So that means you don't want to be part of a news cycle, because obviously news cycles have the good, the bad, and the ugly.
I don't want to, well, I want to create my own news cycle.
Okay.
That's what I want to do.
But do you not think that people are sort of skeptical enough if it's just positive spin news stories? They might sort of...
It doesn't have to be positive spin. I mean, I don't think you're delivering a message to an audience, right? It's not positive spin. It's just, it's not even spin. It's just, hey, I'm just saying something different.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And you don't want to be part of the news cycle because people forget very quickly, right? News cycles last all of 15 seconds.
Unless it's a scandal.
Especially if it's a scandal.
Some of them have legs.
Well, except you keep getting into trouble and then it becomes a problem. But I mean, even scandals, they blow over after a while, as you know very well. So you want to create your own audience and you want to curate and create your own audience. And I think the founders that have done that have done exceptionally well over the last few years, particularly because tech media, which used to be a fantastic aggregator of perspectives in the days of like Radar and all of that, like it's just become kind of a press release machine, right? So you don't want to be in that, you know, press release punctuated by breaking news. And that's like what you don't want to be. Tech press is over.
Wow.
There is no future for tech press. All the independent journalists who are the personalities behind the news are going to build their own platforms, which is what you're seeing, right? And there are going to be so many of them that they'll just have to design and talk about their own audience. You're already seeing it with some of the tech about alum. The investors are still lazy. That's the problem. But it's already here. Like when I'm thinking about a brand new company, I'm reading Twitter, I'm reading Instagram, or I'm going on campus myself, which is where I'm coming from now. Because I don't think Tech About can deliver on that mandate. Or any other trade publication. They're all dead, they're all for sale.
So then what would your advice be for founders who aren't at your stage yet? Because you're like 10 years in and this
Build
journey.
an audience.
Just so building an audience.
Build an audience. Look at Hack Sultan, for example, right? I'm not always a big fan of his thing, but he built a really interesting audience with MBT and MBTWS, right? Now, if he wants to put anything through it, he can very easily pull stuff through it. I think a lot more founders are going to want to go that route and become experts in their own areas. And then same thing with Jason, actually. Jason was the number one model for this, right? Like he basically did direct.
No, he did, because he was, I mean, his name, you'll not be surprised, has come up a lot as a case study throughout my conversations in this podcast, because he gave commentary whilst building, and it was that warts and all commentary, and it was transparent and cutting and brutal.
Exactly.
But I think that once people got over the shock of how he expressed himself and talked about the difficulties of it, people actually found it cathartic reading it, because they recognized themselves and their own journeys in some of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it was that the way he got to people was through the brutality of it, right? I don't think if he wrote it like a journal from like a normal tech founder, it would have had any attention.
There's no Dear Diary.
You know what I mean?
No, but it goes back to exactly what you were saying, is speaking in capital letters.
Yeah, you got to speak in capital letters. You got to speak like Donald Trump.
But the tech space isn't filled with E's and Jasons.
It should be, though.
It should be, but it isn't. There are. I suppose I love the idea about building community and speaking directly to people. I mean, this is a podcast, right? We're speaking directly to certain audiences as well. But I'm wondering if the negative impact could be the fact that people kind of become polarized and they're not actually absorbing different perspectives because they're only reading one narrative at a time.
Well, it's because of the paucity of narratives, right? You can't ask a Jason or myself to have other people's perspectives, right? You see what I mean? But I think you got to give people more credit. They're very intelligent. They know what's bullshit.
I'm not sure people do.
Oh, trust me. I think people know what's bullshit. They may not say they do.
Okay, and why don't they say it?
Because it's not polite to say.
Okay.
And it's not popular. But I can tell you many times when I say something that everybody says, wow, that's not nice, there are people in my DM saying, somebody needed to say it.
Yeah.
So they know. And I think it's in that debate, that public debate, that we actually find we have a real authentic experience of the ecosystem.
And so you have come across your fair share of criticism, critiques, analysis as part of the course, because I guess putting yourself above the parapet, you're open, people discuss freely. What are some of your coping mechanisms for dealing with negative discourse?
I don't take it personally.
Yeah.
I think that's number one. Most people are very surprised that they'll criticize me personally on social media, and I'm happy to talk to them wherever I see them. And I just think of it as two separate personalities, right? I mean, the other thing is also that when I put it away, I put it away.
Yeah.
You see, it's just not in my memory. I don't even remember what was said. And, if somebody makes a false claim, I defend myself. I think that's the most important thing. I don't really believe in this cute manicured PR image. I like to get to the facts, to get to things very quickly, because ultimately your only currency when you go directly is your integrity and your authenticity. The moment people detect fakeness, they will only tolerate you for so long.
And have you ever had a situation or a scenario where you've been speaking to the media or using social media where you instantly got a sinking feeling and you thought, A, this is going to be troublesome, or I wish I hadn't said that, and you're thinking, how can I row back from this? Or is it a case of you've put it out there, you stand by it?
Once it goes out, that's it.
That's it.
Once it goes out, that's it. Are there moments where I feel like on review, I could have phrased things differently or better? Or maybe I trusted too much? For sure. I mean, I would definitely, the whole issue with like Flutterwave scandal, because, at the end of the day, there was an agenda at play, very clearly, but it didn't really have much, like, it was unfortunate that the agenda didn't work the way it was supposed to, because there was nothing really that was scandalous about what happened. But I perhaps trusted a bit too much in filtered press.
Yeah.
And what I've learned since that time is if there is an issue, put out your own statement about it, engage in your own conversation about it, make it about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely make it about yourself, and dispel it immediately. And then once you're done, you're done. The real E is actually quite introverted. So I've learned over the years how to be very much an actor.
Mm-hmm.
And so, without necessarily losing my authenticity, but being emphatic and learning that works. Because what I've learned is that if you sound dispassionate, people think you're lying.
Yeah, no one wants to engage with someone robotic.
You know what I mean? So even if you're telling the truth, that's the funniest part, right?
Do you think it's the case that sometimes people are so focused on telling the truth, they lose that authenticity, and there's that...
Yeah, they want to be factual, and the reality is no one ever is. Everyone's telling a little lie every day.
What lie are you telling today?
Well, I'm being a little bit extremist about the media stuff, given I'm an investor in tech about. But I do want to invest in more media companies. I actually think that Tech About's monopoly on the tech media space is very bad for the ecosystem. There's just something missing.
No, but even recently Tech About, they've done more long format journalism.
Yeah.
They
evolve so quickly. Events. They're a really good
it's a mature
incumbent.
platform now.
Beyond that, I think it's a really good incumbent. Like, they listen and they actually quickly implement feedback. But at the same time, I do think that they need to be challenged by a lot of younger, better writers on Substack.
So what does that look like? It can't be Tech About 2. Is it something more sort of long format?
I think it'll be founder-led. Because I think the missing piece for Tech About is that most of the reporters don't have an insider's perspective. And honestly speaking, my dream job would be to retire and then actually just go build my own tech publication. And it's funny because that was actually why we started Future Africa. That was what it was supposed to be.
As in, it was a content platform to start with?
It was supposed to be a content platform.
And then you just decided to evolve into a fund?
It had to evolve into a fund because what happened during COVID, and this is kind of the story of my life, what happened during COVID was that a lot of capital stepped back.
Yeah.
And then the ecosystem was at risk. And so we had to step forward to fill that gap. But left to me, like, I thought my work was done after Flutterwave, and I ran a campaign, and I was like, I just want to write about what everybody's doing. And that was the original idea.
And what do you write about these? Do you still write?
I write, not as much as I would like to. But these days, I think what I want to share is more the perspective that either the insiders don't want to share, or can't, because it will make them look bad or it make them look vulnerable. I want to talk about that piece. The part everybody doesn't understand about how this sausage gets made.
So that's an interesting perspective, because a lot of founders, we've dealt with hundreds over the years, and some of them are amazing. Some of them really lack emotional intelligence. Some of them have so much bravado, you almost can't tell if they're serious or not. And then, so I find it quite tricky just having only founders write and commentate about the ecosystem, because I don't know if there's enough of them who have the ability to write journalistically.
You can smell the fake.
Yeah, but can others?
The fakes. Well,
because in the last couple of years, there's been a lot of people who've been and gone quite quickly, and I don't think at the time people were able to smell the fakes. Certainly the investors weren't, when the investors were just throwing out.
Yeah, investors are very naive. I think we can generally agree about that.
No, because I've had people in my office and I'm like, how have you raised so much money? Part of me is like, okay, great, because you've chosen Wimbat to be your PR partner, but I can't match the two in terms of how they've managed to raise so much money, and that they don't necessarily seem that savvy.
Yeah, the truth is, you guys do a fantastic job of dressing folks up. So there's that.
I'm going to take that as a backhanded compliment.
It is a compliment. But I also think that medium-wise, it was easy when most things were text. I think now we're moving to an age of podcasts, video. You can't hide your lack of knowledge and general incompetence around how what you know about what you're doing.
Very true. So then
the lack of depth is harder to hide.
Very true. So then when you're talking about depth, what levels of depth are you looking for when it comes to early stage founders,
Absolutely.
People that you invest in with Future Africa? Because we can't necessarily expect them to be as polished as you are, but what communication skills do you look for? Not necessarily how they engage with the media, but even how they engage with you and other investors.
So what I really care about is a founder who is bold enough to share the one thing that they believe that everybody will crucify them for. And especially if it's about their customer. The question I always ask is, like, what do you know about your customer that everybody else is missing? And that question is the most important question I ask, because it gives me a sense of whether that person has a courage of conviction to say, this is what people believe, but like, this is really what is going on. And that contrast is it. I mean, back to the example we started with, right? Andela was willing to say there's Harvard quality material in Africa. Actually, there is better than Harvard quality material in Africa. I don't know how many founders have the boldness to stand up and say, we will go toe to toe with Harvard and win.
It feels like it would be bold in 2025, let alone 10 years ago.
Exactly. And this was 2014. So I just feel like that boldness is rare to find. And I think that's perhaps why we're finding less and less, suitable founders, because not enough founders have the courage of conviction to be able to make a bold claim and back it up with data.
So what do you do? What is your secret sauce in terms of coaxing some of that energy, the communication skills out of founders? Like you might meet a founder and they might be technically brilliant and they might be able to scrutinize and analyze their audience, but they can't communicate it, or they're not compelling, or they don't have those skills. Like, can they be taught? Or is it a case of they might just make a good business, but not a great business because they can't sell it?
So, because authenticity is the core requirement, like they have to be believable, and you can't teach believability. You either believe or you don't. You know what I mean? So for me, the key thing is, do you believe? And if you believe, but the only issue is that you don't have courage, I can give you courage. I can tell you, go say that and put Future Africa on your page and everyone will take you seriously.
Okay.
But if you don't believe it, I can't help you believe it.
And have you got examples of you being able to take a founder or someone that you want to invest in through that process?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, FMM is a practical example. When we started talking to FMM, they were very content to be a multi-choice vendor, helping them find locations and blah, blah, blah. And by the time we were done with them, they were like, we're going to disrupt Hollywood.
Okay.
We're going to end studios globally.
And then I love that energy. So then the opposite of that would be, how do you find founders who are maybe intimidated by your story and your brand, and then they kind of hide themselves a bit?
If you're intimidated, you're not a fit.
No.
Yeah, you have to have your own star power.
So then just to finish off, what is the line? What's the winning slogan for 2025 and beyond?
Invest in Nigeria. It's the only winning thing in Africa.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, E. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the Wimbutt Way. You've been amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's been a fascinating journey speaking to some of the continent's most impressive, compelling storytellers, commentators, thought leaders. I cannot thank all of them enough for taking their time out from their busy lives to discuss comms, PR, communications for African tech. I hope you've enjoyed it too. Here's to the next season.